It's finally time for me to check out Jersey Mike's subs. I'm gonna break it down with some detailed analysis of their iconic sandwich creations, starting right now.
Growing up in the Italian deli business, I've made a lot of Italian subs. Now, I'm no stranger to sub chains, but Jersey Mike's is one I haven't explored too much. Let's see what it's all about.
I actually came into possession of a gift card, so I'm gonna see how far I can get this to take me. I think I've narrowed it down to one hot, one cold, so let's see A, how much is on this card, and B, how Jersey Mike's does with their subs. Alright, as far as the gift card goes, $25. I ended up getting 2 subs with that. One hot, one cold, and I wanted to compare to 2 different sizes, one regular and one giant. So let's see what we got here. I'm gonna start with the hot one since that's what they gave me first. I got the Big Kahuna Cheese Steak, and taking it to the notes, grilled onions, peppers, mushrooms, jalapenos, and extra white American cheese. Now the price for this was right around $10. It definitely is hefty, it's definitely got a lot inside, but let's see how it tastes. It's messy. We're making a mess. Interesting. I'm gonna have to break this one down a little bit more at the home studio. Honestly, really the only flavor going on there is the white American cheese, which isn't bad, but with all the peppers and onions and steak in there, I would want this to taste a little more savory and not really cheesy. After that Big Kahuna cheesesteak, I need a sip of this tasty beverage to wash it down. I'm mainly interested in getting into this original Italian sub. Gotta go to the notes. Provolone, ham, prosciutto, capiculo, which is funny the way they spell that, salami, and pepperoni. At Jersey Mike's, there's a handful of different types of Italian subs, which basically vary the ingredients. That one there seems to maximize on just about everything, but let's see how it tastes. One thing I thought was cool as they were making these is they slice to order, which is not common, especially in this area here. All right. And I did order this Mike's Way, which has onions, lettuce, tomato, oil, vinegar, and I saw her shake some kind of herbs on there. For a fast food Italian sub, that's really good actually. Not perfect though. Kind of a little bit of a spoiler alert. In terms of the different styles of ham that they have on this, I don't really understand the point. So preliminary, based on what I've tasted, not bad. The only thing I'll say though, in terms of price, this is a little bit ridiculous in terms of what they charge. Essentially, that gift card, $25, couldn't even pay for 2 subs. And I know I did order the giant in one case, and I ordered a large soda. Ended up putting about $8 out of pocket, which is fine. But I could not imagine coming here for lunch on a regular basis. Let's break it down, starting with that Big Kahuna cheesesteak. I don't want you to think that I really didn't like the Big Kahuna. I liked it. It's just, honestly, I feel like something that advertises it needs to be a cheesesteak should have a little more steak and a little less cheese. Although, I will say, I guess maybe I'm being a little bit unfair. In terms of how this is advertised, they do say extra white American cheese, and as you get into this, you can actually see they definitely deliver on that. So in that sense, I'm not gonna get down too hard on them about it. But in terms of having the onions and the peppers, and you can see there's different types of peppers in here, I don't think I even tasted a mushroom in the few bites that I had there. In terms of what's in there, it just seems like it should use a little more steak. One thing that worried me about that Big Kahuna a little bit was the fact that the bread got really soggy, and it kind of led me to think that maybe they were using an aged roll, maybe a roll from yesterday or something. But as I bit into that, the structural integrity around the outside still maintained a little bit of that crispness that you can only get in a fresh roll, so no worries there. The softness is probably just a function of the fact that you have a bunch of stuff that was just heated on a flat top. So let's move away from the hot sub and go directly into the cold. I think that's where we're going to get a little more substance out of the analysis here. And I'm going to start with, given that they have multiple options for Italian subs on their menu, there's a Jersey Shore, there's original Italian, at least a handful of others, and they're all just different combinations of hams and salamis with cheese, just coming from downstate and the New Jersey thing. An Italian sub, and we need to define this before we actually jump in, because as I get into the analysis here, you're going to see that there's an inherent flaw to this sub that kind of has to do with the fact that they're including a lot of things. So an Italian sub, at the heart of it, is ham, salami, provolone. Italian sub is kind of a misnomer. In Italy, there's no such thing as an Italian sub. So it's an Italian-American creation, probably somewhere in New York City, New Jersey, Philadelphia, somewhere there were a lot of Italian immigrants. And there's no fancy prosciutto and, you know, weird stuff. It's literally boiled ham, salami, usually Genoa salami, and just normal deli provolone. When people start to get cute, that's when it's a different type of thing, and that's kind of what we have here. But back in the day in my dad's store, we had the original Italian, which is ham, salami, provolone, and then we had the special Italian, which added hot peppers, mortadella, and capicola, but not the capicola that they're talking about here at Jersey Mike's. This is more of the cured meat, also known as copa if you're familiar with all these fancy cheese boards and charcuterie that's out there now. So at Jersey Mike's, the one that I tried is the number 13, the original Italian. And the first thing I want to get into here in terms of what's on top of it, there's essentially 3 types of hams, 2 types of salami, and 1 type of provolone cheese, in addition to all the toppings. And let's break it down individually. We're going to start with the bread. In eating this, I can tell you that the bread that I got was fresh, and that was kind of corroborated by the fact that the hot sandwich also kind of had what I thought was a nice fresh roll, which is very reassuring because I was there before 11 o'clock. As you can see here, the bread has a nice crustiness to it, top and bottom. You always go with the crusty. There's not a whole lot more to say about the bread, honestly. You don't really taste much from it, but it's definitely there to deliver this whole experience. Now, the way this is built, I would say is a little bit backwards and upside down. They put the cheese on the bottom of the bread, then they put the meats, then they put what I'm going to call the toppings, which shouldn't be toppings, and I'll get into that in just a second here. Then they slather it with what they call sauce, then they hit it with some seasonings, and they put the lid on and they cut it up for you. In terms of that provolone, there ain't a whole lot of flavor going on there. It honestly is just kind of a layer that goes on the bottom, and you don't taste it. It's there, but you'd never know it was there with all those other meats on top of it. And it looks like what I thought is really cool, they slice to order, which is one of those things you don't find that very often. There's something to say for fresh sliced deli meats going on a sub. As they're freshly sliced and they get piled on, it's a lot easier to not fold it onto the sandwich. And when you get those little piles of meats, it kind of adds a little bit more to the experience as you bite through. I never was a fan of like slapping slices onto things, but as you see when they get to the salamis in this one here, they kind of resort to that as well. But with salami, it's kind of one of those things where unless you're using a nice large salami like a Genoa sliced on the diagonal, which not a lot of people do anymore, it's kind of hard to pile, so it's more common to see it slapped on like that. But in terms of the meats, so first up we got some capicola ham, which is kind of a ham that's got some red pepper around the outside. Usually that's made from the shoulder instead of the leg, and it's got a little bit more texture, but for all intents and purposes, when you see a sub that says capicola, you can assume that's just like a red ham. Then on top of that, there's another ham, and it's called prosciutini. Prosciutini is actually just like a boiled ham coated with black pepper, and I saw their deli case. You can see that all the meats that they have there, and prosciutini was one of those things that working in a deli I used to hate when people ordered it, because that black pepper would actually get all over the place as you were slicing through it. You would push it through the blade and then you could actually see it just kind of disperse everywhere. It was kind of a nightmare. This one here doesn't seem to have a lot of black pepper, and that goes to the point where how much ham that's just ham are you going to put on a sandwich? Because the next thing that they put, boiled ham, and when you break it down, the capicola versus the prosciutini versus boiled ham, there's not a whole lot of variety in there. There's a little extra black pepper, there's a little extra red pepper, but there's nothing that you could say, I really appreciate paying more for all these different types of hams. I would argue that even if you got a sandwich that just had their standard ham or prosciutini or capicola, which I think is funny, they actually call it capiculo there. Culo is the actual Italian word for ass, just in case you didn't know that. I think it's funny if you were to eat a sandwich with one of those, I bet you it would taste marginally different in terms of the construction of what you have here. So I would say, just based on what I tasted today, don't pay extra for any of these fancy original Italian sub or Jersey Shore, whatever it is. Just stick with the base level. But where I really got to get on this as far as saying like, what are you doing, Jersey Mike's, is they put the veggies on top of the sub, and that to me is weird, and here's why. So first they'll start with the onion, which they'll layer on top of the salami. I didn't even talk about the distinction of salami and pepperoni. Honestly, I barely even tasted a difference there, but they'll start with onions on top of salami, then their lettuce, then their tomato. And here's where it really falls apart for me. It's subtle, but you can see here, they're actually building the sub on this type of marble slab that's on top of their countertop, and I thought that was bizarre. The other thing I thought was bizarre is you see this little white handle that's sticking out here. When they're done building the subs, they essentially use that, it's like a squeegee, where they literally just squeegee whatever falls off the counter. Now here's where it's interesting. As they're putting the lettuce and tomato, then they put what they call the sauce, which is essentially like a red wine vinegar and olive oil. That stuff literally spills off of the tomato, so it barely gets a chance to seep in, and even if it were to seep in all the way down here, it would hit the meats, which then it would kind of ricochet off. So I would say if you're gonna get a sub there and you really want to taste that red wine vinegar, have them apply it to the bread. I didn't know that's how they made the subs there. I guess I could have looked more literally at the product shots online, but I didn't know that. If I would have known that, I would have asked them to build it with the lettuce, tomato, onion, and the dressing before they put the meats on top. But you live and you learn. After they apply all that sauce, as they call it, then they hit it with a shaker of herbs. When I got that first bite. In terms of taste, I didn't taste any oil and vinegar. It was definitely all over my hands, and that's consistent with the fact that it was just kind of running off as they were actually building it. And of course, after she was done, she did squeegee off that marble slab just to kind of drive home the fact that more is actually making it off of the sub than onto the sub. So they do better with waste if they actually work to get that stuff onto the sandwich and not onto your hands and onto their marble countertop. That's not to say at all this is bad. This is actually a fairly respectable Italian sub. Even in the neighborhood here, there's a couple of really nice Italian places where you can get a good sub, probably for a little bit cheaper. The one thing I will say about this, in terms of the size, the giant is on par with what you would get as like a foot long at Subway or like a large sub at a local Italian place. So the fact that this is like $18, that to me is a little bit crazy in terms of the pricing. The fact that the Big Kahuna was essentially a 6-inch, I can kind of forgive that. There's extra cheese that's advertised. You're getting them to cook it a little bit, so there's a little more to the build. But in terms of what I would call a decent size sub, which they call giant, framing is everything, $18 is a little steep. Make sure you hit like, and at this point you can choose your own adventure. You can either go into more Italian sub reviews or cheesesteak reviews, and I'll see you in the next one.